Okay, so before we introduce our guest today, Ian, I have to let you know this because you've been a big driving force here. Between Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X, guess how many people are being exposed to this podcast?
I couldn't even tell you how many.
1.6 million people.
Wow.
So that makes me uncomfortable.
Fantastic.
That makes me uncomfortable because I'm just
that many people.
there's that many
right
people
now.
looking at my ugly face, but hopefully they're just listening on Spotify. A lot of people know this guy's better looking face. That's Gregg Ritz. Gregg, welcome to Deer Talk Now. Thanks for taking time out with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to be talk a little TC with you today.
Absolutely. So we're going to get to that. So I want to preface this to anybody who's listening. And I'm talking about, is the government listening? This is a breaking news podcast. And also, we're talking to a longtime deer and deer hunting friend. So that's what this is about. This has nothing to do with anything other than that. And he so happens to, again, be the face of Thompson Center. But I want to go back. If you recognize Gregg, you probably recognize him from television. He's been on TV for as long as, I think, maybe longer than we've been doing our program, which has been 20 years. Hunt Masters TV program. And Gregg, I know you've been doing it since the 90s, correct?
Yeah, I think this is my 23rd year hosting television, which is hard to believe. That's why we wear a hat and cover the gray hair a little bit.
Well, at least you have hair. I don't. That's why I always wear my sever hat.
No,
here.
but like you said, we've had a long relationship with deer and deer hunting, and shared a lot of stories and hunting camps and industry relationships over the years, and happy to be reconnecting under this venue.
So I'm going to start there. I was actually going to save this because I actually jotted this down this morning when I was going to it. And I'm going to give you a couple firsts for me, and then I'm going to give you a story.
Okay.
My first TV deer was in, I hate prefacing it like that, but my first TV deer was in I can't remember what year. Whenever we started the TV program, it was with the Thompson Center Muzzle Loader. And my first turkey was with the Thompson Center Muzzle Loader, and my best deer was with the Thompson Center Muzzle Loader. Best muzzle loading deer was with the Thompson Center Muzzle Loader. But the story I have to tell you, because it's a guy we both know and a guy we've had on the program and a guy who used to be a deer and deer hunting field editor way back in the day, Larry Weisson. So
Yes.
This would have been in, I think, 1995. It was him and Sherry Fears had me down to the Nail Ranch in Texas. And it was a turkey hunt. And I'm going to try to keep the story short, but Larry and I had hit it off right away when I started here. And we were down there, and him and, I can't remember, the guy's name was Craig, I remember that. They took me out, and they set me out, and they said, go over here and sit down. It was in the dark for turkey hunting. And little did I know, we didn't have phones back then. A storm was coming in, a rainstorm was coming in, and they knew it, and Larry was not going to go hunting that morning. And they're sitting there giggling as they drive away, and it just opens up and starts pouring. And I sat there for 2 hours. And I went and, probably not the smartest thing, but I went and hid under one of those where they park the tractors. They come back, and they are laughing it up like 2 hours later. Hey, you ready to go get some lunch or some breakfast? And I said, yeah. And I come walking over there, and I put my soggy turkey vest in the back of the van or the truck, and I put my muzzle loader in the truck. And I said, hang on, I left something over there. And I come back with the biggest gobbler I've ever shot at that.
No kidding.
That turkey came in, and their eyes are that big. And that was very cool. But so the breaking news here is, Gregg, through all these years, you worked at Thompson Center back in the day. You actually became CEO of the company
Correct.
years ago. That event, that changed, I think Smith & Wesson bought it, in 2007?
Correct. That's right.
And now you own it again. Tell us the story. What happened here?
So yes, back in 2007, Smith & Wesson wanted to diversify into a hunting company or platform, and they also wanted to enter the long gun business, and they needed barrel making technology, which, as you remember, back in the day, Thompson Center was known for its barrels. because we had interchangeable platforms and we were on the cutting edge of barrel making technology. We truly had the best production barrels. And Smith & Wesson made the ownership group an offer to purchase the business. And so I remained on with Smith & Wesson for a couple years as president of their hunting division. I ran TC and helped get them into the long gun business. And then I realized I'm more of a small company entrepreneur. All the credit to these guys who can run these big companies. But that just wasn't my DNA. So I left and started Wildcom, and then obviously had my show Huntmasters. And Thompson Center continued to support me, and I was their lead ambassador. We did marketing programs with them through Wildcom, so we had a connection with the brand. But in 2010, you probably remember this, they closed the Rochester facility down, and they moved everything to Springfield, Mass. And what they didn't realize at the time was that it removed the DNA of the company, because not many people went to Springfield, and it changed over time. The types of the products they brought out, how they addressed the marketplace, the customer service, and it really doesn't make it right or wrong. It just made it more institutional. And fast forward to COVID, which changed all of our lives. And so during the COVID years, the demand for Smith & Wesson products, the handguns, the ARs, skyrocketed. And the board made the decision, we need to focus on making the core Smith & Wesson products, because that's, we have a fiduciary responsibility. We have a big demand. That was the year they hit over $1 billion. Yep. And so they stopped producing Thompson Center products back in 2021. And they really didn't do much with the company. They entertained some offers, but pretty much it just sat dormant. And so I was fortunate enough to put together some partners that believed in being family owned, privately owned, not private equity, not big investor money, because I had this passion to bring it back. Because I know what TC meant to myself, I know what it meant to the community, what it meant to the industry. And, I had other partners who believed in that. Glenn Butcher's one who owns Bass and Bucks. He was one of our big retailers, and he was kind of the guy who put all the pieces together, as well as another partner of mine. And April 12th of this year, which is a couple months ago, not that long ago. We signed the deal, and now we're rebuilding the company, because obviously there isn't a company, right? It's an intellectual property, and the company, who knows, it could have sat dormant forever. And my goal is to bring the brand back, to relaunch the Encore and the Contender and the Icon and the Triumph, and bring those legacy products back.
That is pretty awesome. We see that a lot in our industry. We've had it with our company. We were part of corporate for 20 years until Brad and I, and when Steve Bartella, we kind of did the same thing. But you've seen this in the industry long enough where, and this is not speaking ill of any other, of Smith & Wesson, another iconic brand. But some of these things, when you get big conglomerates, these legacy brands will kind of die in the vine, will they not? If they're not nurtured.
Well, yeah, and that's right, because it's the people that made the company. It's the culture in the company, and the culture of Smith is different than what TC was. And I will absolutely tell you that Mark Smith and the people at Smith & Wesson, they were champions for this sale. They wanted to see it return back to what it was. They've been super helpful in the transition. And so it's just not like, hey, here it is. It's like, what resources do you need? Like, how can we support the transition period because of what TC meant to the industry? And, because it's rebuilding that culture that is going to keep the gun business alive. We were focused on the independent retailers. We were focused on customer service and innovation. And hey, if we made 200 guns of one model or one caliber of one barrel, we were okay with that. Somebody of Smith & Wesson size or a Ruger size or a Browning size, they would never consider doing something for less than 20,000 units.
Sure.
But you know, that entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is still important in this industry today.
If you guys don't know, Thompson Center, they started in, I know this because it was a year before I was born. They started in 1965. They invented what you would call modern muzzle loading in 1970 when they came out with the first, it was a Hawkins-style muzzle loader. But one thing that I could not find in my history studies was, when was that first inline brought out, Greg? Do you remember?
So the first inline would have been the Scout muzzleloader, and that would have been, you know, probably early 90s. So you're right. So Thompson Center popularized the sport of muzzleloader hunting, like you said, back in 1970. Now we did get a little help from Robert Redford in 1972 with the Jeremiah Johnson movie. I will give Robert Redford his due in Hollywood, and but then what we did, a lot of people don't realize this, is the owners at the time, you know, Bob Gustafson and Ken French was the general manager. They invested heavily in working with the state agencies to create separate muzzleloader seasons, to create a sport around the product. And so as we all know, and it varies by state, but that's really what drove muzzleloading. It wasn't the passion for muzzleloading, it was an additional tag, more time in the field, another opportunity to fill your tag later in the season. And then Tony Knight came along right back in the 90s.
1985, and, I think he started with his.
Exactly. The MK85, right? Everybody remembers that. Which then, you know, became the Wolverine. And I will give Tony a lot of credit for modernizing the sport, creating the inline muzzleloader, the removable breech plug. And, you know, so TC, you know, we went through some times in the mid to late 90s, you know, where we're trying to figure out, like, where's this sport going? And then I joined the you know, the company back in '96, and I was charged with you know, dissecting the marketplace and understanding where the sport's going. And you probably will remember this, back in '98, March of '98, we had the fire.
Oh, that's right.
And yeah, and we lost a third of our manufacturing facility. And the company was really brought to its knees because we had a woodworking facility. A lot of people don't realize how vertically integrated TC was at the time. We had investment castings, so we did all the steel castings. We had a sawmill in Prairie, Kansas, right? So we cut the trees, we blanked them, we kiln dried them, brought everything to New Hampshire. We carved them, hand sanded them, finished them. We did everything. And the fire originated in the wood shop. And the company just came to a screeching halt in '98. And I'll never forget, I go into work the next day. You know, things are still smoldering, don't know what's going to do. Bob Gustafson, the owner at the time, you know, employees are starting to come back to work. And, you know, and he said, I don't know where we're going. We got to talk to the insurance company. Like, we got to figure this out. Like, I can't pay you until we figure out what we're going to do. And, you know, the employees just said, well, we get it. You supported us for all these years, and we're here to help you. And they grabbed the shovels and the brooms, and, you know, and they cleaned and picked through the rubble for whatever pieces could be salvaged on their own dime, on their own time. And Bob honored that, and he hired every single person back as we started to rebuild. But that was the culture. That's that New England bootstrap, figure it out, we won't quit mentality. And that's what I want to bring back. You know, that entrepreneurial spirit, that love and passion for building guns.
That is such an awesome story. I knew about the fire. I didn't know about all of those details. Because as you were talking about that, you said that was 98. I remember it would have been in 95. I think it was the Thunderhawk inline. That was my first experience with one. And that's when that started taking off. And as you mentioned, I guess I should know this, but I didn't know it either. When you said it was when you were looking at seasons, it was about that time in 95-ish when you saw it was this huge influx. I remember we were doing stories about muzzle loading and how exciting it is because it was an extra, like here at home, it was an extra, I believe, 10 days in the woods. So it wasn't that 7 or 9 day gun season that we had. It's like you had another basically week and a half tacked on in December, and that was happening across the country, and that kind of like built up into a bubble. Where do you see that now, as far as, and I want to talk about this because I know Thompson Center is way more than muzzleloading now.
Sure,
but,
right.
Where do you see muzzleloading today as opposed to where it was 25 years ago?
So great question. So when we came out of the fire in the late 90s, Bob said, "Hey, I can rebuild the infrastructure. I can buy equipment. Like we can use this as an opportunity to modernize what we do. But where do we take the marketplace? Like how do we compete with night? How do we regain, that technological advancement?" And I said, "Give me a little time." And I went on the road, and I went to all the major dealers around the country, and I came back, and I met with Bob, and I met with Ken French and the design team, one of which those designers, engineer Carl Ricker, he works for me now. He came on back to TC after 30 some years, and I said, we need to make a Magnum muzzleloader that utilizes pellets, has 209 ignition, fiber optic sights, and is interchangeable with centerfire.
That's right.
And they're like, okay, because we had launched the Encore handgun. So the design group, and it's amazing what they can do when you don't have political or corporate constraints, right? And this is who TC was. So 6 months later, out comes the Encore rifle muzzleloader shotgun platform, right? 28-inch barrel, Magnum capabilities, right? Because Pyrodex pellets were just introduced. So we were able, and then of course it came out at a high price point. And like, nobody's going to buy I think it's $600 muzzleloader at the time, right? They're like, nobody's going to buy that. And they did. And so muzzleloading, and then obviously we toggled with night for a while. You can do this, we can do that. And then of course, when Power Rod came out and Speed Breach XT, remove with your hand, and FlexTech stock. So we had all of that. But then, the technology kind of plateaued, if you will. And then what happened? Crossbows came out, and then straight wall cartridges came out. So the spotlight shifted from muzzleloading to other sports, because muzzleloaders, if you remember in the Midwest, were utilized during slug gun seasons.
Yeah, they shot better.
They shot better.
You could shoot 200 yards where you couldn't do that with a shotgun.
Exactly. But now with the advancements in ammunition, like the Hornady bore drivers, right? I mean, supremely accurate out to 300 yards. I know I've tagged animals out that far. And obviously Blackhorn 209 powder. So the components caught up to the guns to give us a longer range. So 300 yards now with a muzzleloader. Yeah, I could probably argue 400 or 500 yards in the right hands, right conditions, or at least on the range, are capable.
Yep.
So I see where muzzleloading is going to kind of come full circle. The muzzleloading and the Encore. So I'll kind of break it into two pieces. One, the ease of use with Fire Stick. So Traditions partnered with Federal to develop the Fire Stick. And by the way, did a phenomenal job. Like they did a huge service to the industry. Ease of use, cleaning, and safety. And so where TC is going to take that is we're now going to put the Fire Stick in the Encore this fall.
Oh, sweet. I didn't even know that. That's breaking news right here. That's pretty cool.
Right.
So you can get an Encore that's Fire Stick compatible.
Compatible. Yep. So you can buy a barrel. So we've got a lot of the designs done. So I mean, obviously we got to manufacture it. Our goal is by November to have a handful of these out there. But now to utilize that technology on the Encore platform. So if a guy has an Encore, rifle, shotgun, muzzleloader, doesn't matter, and he can accessorize that by a barrel and be able to utilize fire stick, and that just makes the sport easier. So I think working on the simplicity of the sport, where if you've used the fire stick, you shoot a lot because it's easy. Yep. Push the bullet down, put it in the back end, fire it, swab the barrel out, go home. So you're going to see the ease of use and the expansion of fire stick, not only on the TC platform, but the states now, more states are allowing the use of fire stick because they see the safety opportunity.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Hoyt Archery and the all-new Alpha X30. Compact yet forgiving, it seamlessly blends into your hunting environment, whether you're nestled in your blind, perched in a tree stand, or venturing into the backcountry. The Alpha X30 allows you to make adjustments and tailor your performance like never before with the new HBX Exact Cam. For more information, visit Hoyt.com.
What are your thoughts, Greg, on, I have shot the fire stick and I've shot deer with them. I think it's awesome. What are your thoughts on people saying, well, that's no longer muzzle loading. Now it's something else?
You know, I sit on both sides of the fence. I think if there are a lot of muzzleloader hunters that are opportunists, meaning they didn't fill their tag in bow or gun season. So this allows them to stay in the field. And if this is a vehicle to bring more people in the sport, give a guy more time in the field because he's a working man, working 6 days a week, and he's not a purist, I'm happy. You know, and those people who say, hey, I want to pour the powder down my barrel and I want to tweak my loads and I'm a sophisticated muzzleloader guy, then, go shoot a standard breeze plug gun. So I think you kind of pick your own. It's kind of like crossbows and compound bows, right? States like Ohio and Illinois that allow both. You pick what you're passionate about.
Right, I agree with you. And it's for muzzle loading, you still have to put the bullet down. I know people are going to start arguing about that, but your comparison, it rocked the archery world when crossbows first were allowed. Because people say, oh, they're going to decimate the deer herd. This is going to be like gun season where it's like legions of orange hunters driving up the highway. It didn't happen. And if you look at, I can show anybody the harvest records, which I've kept from before I've even been here. That goes back all the way to 92. The harvest for archery is the same, and the harvest for gun is going to be the same. However, you're breaking that down, and the harvest for muzzleloader seasons are going to be the same. Whether you're now, I don't know all the states' different seasons. I just know ours intimately. If you look at that December season, it's a small number. It's like, and you're talking Wisconsin.
Right, and I'm an advocate, obviously, for hunter participation, and I like crossbows. Anybody who follows me knows that I'm passionate about them. Here's an interesting thing that what muzzle loading and crossbows have done is it spread the harvest over a wider period of time and reduced that sharp peak of people in the field. Because if you're in a state like Ohio, right, you're allowed $1. It's what you're allowed, right? So if you were lucky enough to shoot that with a crossbow the first week in November, you're not gun hunting. That took a guy out of the woods, right, and kind of level loaded the amount of people in the field. So I think there's an advantage, depending on the states and how regulations work. So I think we're always trying to strike the balance, of land access and game management. But for the most part, deer herds are improving, and the quality of deer, for sure, is getting better across the country. Nobody can argue that.
You've hunted all over the place, Greg, not only for whitetails, for everything. You can see the videos. His TV shows and clips are all over the place. But specifically whitetails, is there a state that you're still just, I can't believe it's this good here? Is there a state like that sticks out in your mind?
I would say from a state perspective, Iowa and Kansas. I would say, I have got leases or own ground in those states, and I would say because they're so highly restricted, like I didn't draw Kansas this year.
Yeah, I didn't
I'm
either.
still paying for my lease, right? It's a multi-year lease, and so, am I disappointed? Yes. Have I hunted the last 2 years? Yes. So, there's a little bit of exclusivity factor where they're managing the herd. Iowa, I think, is a little too restrictive, right? As a landowner, it can only hunt every 5 or 6 years. Is a bit frustrating.
That's crazy.
It is
crazy.
So I think because of those, obviously I spent a lot of time in Illinois, which so any of your Midwestern states, but there's a lot of up and coming states. Oklahoma, Ohio's always been great. Look at the big deer coming out of Pennsylvania. Right? So I think anywhere where sportsmen are electing to be more selective, or just the average age of the animals are getting bigger, and in turn, or the average age of the animals getting older, and in turn they're getting larger antlered.
Good point. Okay, let's switch back to TC. You're going to have to educate me this. Are the operations in Indiana now?
So the answer is the manufacturing facility is going to be in Wabash, Indiana.
Okay.
The design and engineering group is going to remain in New Hampshire, and really for two reasons. So the DNA of any product comes from the design and the engineering group, right? Because that's the think tank. That's where things are modeled and tested and figured out. So we're going to design, engineer it, build the assembly lines all in New Hampshire, because that's where the original Thompson Center engineers and designers are from. And it's also Gun Valley.
Yep.
Right? So Ruger, Sig, Smith & Wesson, Savage, Remington, right? Just
If you look at the map, that's what he's referring to. If you're not familiar with that term, that's Gun Valley. That's where, I don't know what the percentage is, the lion's share of all firearms are produced in the United States.
Right. So we're going to capitalize on that, industry knowledge, tribal knowledge for guns in the Northeast. But then we're going to utilize good Midwest manufacturing. So labor costs are lower. You have really good, hardworking people, and the states are very, very supportive of us being there. So then once everything's designed, engineered, and lines are built, they'll all be shipped out to Wabash, lines installed, and then we'll produce, do all the warranty, customer service out in the Midwest. And it gives us a central location for distribution as well.
How many employees do you think you're going to have at peak production?
I would say in the next 12 months, we're going to be hiring 100 people.
Wow.
When we get to peak production in, I would say the next 3 years, we'll probably be in that 250 to 300 range.
Wow.
Less than so TC in late 90s, mid 2000s, we were about 500 employees.
Mm-hmm.
But the technology, so how you build a gun and a barrel today is different than 15, 20 years ago. So there's more automation that we can utilize. So I would say we're going to be 2/3 the manpower given the same size, because we have the opportunity. We have a blank slate. So when we buy barrel making equipment and we buy new CNC machines, they have more capabilities than they had before.
And that's the other thing. TC prides itself as an American-made company. Is everything being produced here, or do you have some things that are not?
Well, the only things, and we're working through that now, may be some accessory items. Some injected, molded, or some things that just make sense economically. But all the guns will be made in the U.S. So I would say the only thing that may have some offshore sourcing will be accessory, and they may not. Like, we're going through those item by item, and if it makes sense and we can be competitive, we're going to have as much as we can. But all the guns all the fasteners, all the springs, the stocks, right? We're either doing it ourselves or we're using U.S. suppliers.
So
That's supply base we built.
I'd be picking one up, but for the most part, it's being made right there in Indiana.
Correct.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
That's correct.
American success story. The other question I have for you, Greg, is what do you think your breakdown is percentage-wise between a hunting customer and just maybe a leisure or competitive customer?
That's a great question. Initially, I would say we're going to skew 80% hunting, 20% gun guy, shooting guy, but our goal is to get that closer to 50-50. Because so many people now, and that is one huge benefit of COVID, right? Is more people came in, experienced guns, played in the outdoors, or just recreational shooters. Bringing back the TCR 22, bringing back guns that people can just go to the range, go to the backyard, go to the farm field and shoot and not necessarily be vertical hunting. So we want to become more of a year-round gun company and not just a seasonal hunting company.
That makes sense from a business perspective, obviously. And then one follow-up question on that same topic. If I got my math here correctly, I think you make 4 styles of muzzle loaders.
We do.
Are they just
we do.
So are there 4 inlines in the muzzleloader line?
So what we're going to launch first, so we're going to bring the Encore platform back out. Encore barrels this fall, and then either December, January, start releasing the Encore receivers and complete guns. So that'll give us, as we talked about, rifles, handgun, shotgun, muzzleloader. So now we have straight wall cartridges, bottleneck cartridges, threaded muzzles on the barrels, so we can put suppressors and brakes on, some things that weren't done in the past. So that's all going to be modernized and relaunched. Then right on the heels of that is going to be the Contender. I still believe there's a groundswell that's going to occur when we bring out the Encore and Contender pistols. That there's a community that loves to hunt and shoot with pistols that has not been supported in the last years. So I want to make sure that we wrap our arms around that handgun hunting community. So we're going to do that, and then the Icon bolt action will come out, and then the Triumph muzzleloader. So between now and the end of next year, that pretty much is the product goal lines, if you will. And that's a pretty heavy lift, because remember, all of these have to be retooled and relaunched. It's not just plugging a machine in and out comes a part, right?
Right. Larry Weisson was the one who turned me. I've never actually hunted with a handgun, but I just remember his days. I think it was it North American Hunting Club, where he was just basically traveling the world hunting with that handgun, and he became pretty darn good at it. It was a pretty cool thing.
He really helped to popularize handgun hunting, and obviously there were other other people out there as well, but Larry was the figurehead, and I think you're going to see a lot of new generation. I mean, you can turkey hunt with a handgun now with today's 410 loads that have come out with the TSS shot.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah. So like at states like Maine, we got the Contender out and shot a couple birds this year, and so I think there's some, there's a whole group of users. So when TC, let's just say, went dormant, this group that maybe is 18 to 30, 20 to 35, that their dads and their granddads had a relationship with Thompson Center and their products, but not the younger ones. So we're really going to be focusing on, marketing guns and building guns for a younger demo, to keep this legacy going.
That's pretty awesome. Let's talk about TV just for a minute. What's in store for your TV show? Are you still actively involved, and where can people see it?
Yeah, so Hunt Masters on the Outdoor Channel and My Outdoor TV. So we're on 52 weeks a year, 5 days a week, and I do half whitetails, half adventure hunting. I'm now back doing some international hunts. I went to Spain this year for ibex. I normally like to take one trip internationally, so I'm still going to utilize that as a platform to promote my sponsors and and educate the community and take people along on the adventure. And then, as you know, YouTube and social media, you gotta interact with the public on a more immediate basis. So we try to be super active, on the social media and the YouTube front. And and we're going to have a YouTube channel for Thompson Center as well, where we're going to show people how we rebuild a gun company. We're going to take people along. They're going to see equipment come in, guns being tested, new cartridges coming out, new designs being validated. So it'll be fun to to have people see, from a gun perspective, how do you go build a company nowadays.
Very cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that, and now I got to check out those turkey hunts because that sounds pretty fun. His name is Gregg Ritz. What would be your title? Be owner, Thompson Center?
President of Thompson Center.
President of Thompson Center. Check them out wherever you can find them. It's just like us: YouTube, Facebook, X, and his show is on Outdoor Channel. Gregg, thank you so much for joining us for Deer Talk. I know you're a busy man. Obviously, we really appreciate you taking time out to talk to us today.
Well, thank you. Let's do it again this fall once we get a chance to put the new guns in the field, and we'll have some new stories to tell.
That sounds great. Thank you, Gregg.
Thank you.
All right, for Gregg Ritz, I am Dan Schmidt. All we ask you to do is like and subscribe. That's it, wherever you're listening to this podcast. As Ian told me, Spotify is the big place. You can find it everywhere else where podcasts are dropped. And also, you can watch the video versions on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, wherever you can find deer and deer hunting. For Gregg Ritz, I am Dan Schmidt. Thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next Thursday for another episode of Deer Talk Now.